Hey friends, welcome back to another weekly wellness update. Here in a little bit, I will put in the footage from my weekly check-in with Jonathan Shane of the Keto Road. He is coaching me and helping me out with my nutrition, my fitness, all of that good stuff, trying to make sure everything's in balance. And this past week, as I've been doing the things that I'm supposed to do with tracking and exercise and all of that, some things started to come up, and I've had to deal with them. When things come up, you should deal with them. So what I was experiencing, and you will hear me talking about this in the call, because I was experiencing these things and trying to kind of work through it. And then I felt like I was able to express kind of what it was that I was dealing with in the call with Jonathan. And then he gave me some really good advice. And since then, that was about 3 days ago now, I have been, kind of working through it more with more information and some more clarity, and hopefully coming out on the other end of it. So what I started to experience is what I'm going to call a false food scarcity mindset or thought pattern. So if you guys have been following me for a little bit, you know that I've been dealing with some health issues. The most recent one is hyperthyroidism. And I'm in the process of, getting that under control. It's not under control yet, but it's getting there. We're definitely making progress. And one of the symptoms of hyperthyroidism is extreme hunger, because it revs your metabolism and things are just moving faster than they should and makes you very, very hungry. And so I have been very hungry for the last several months. And I didn't really have these issues come up before because I wasn't tracking my food. I was just eating to hunger. And so I was extra hungry. I ate more food and that was it. With, working with Jonathan, I am tracking my macros and trying to, keep myself at a certain calorie level and certain macro level. And so the combination of the hunger and the tracking, just the act of tracking my food and feeling like I couldn't just eat whatever I want whenever I want, it kind of triggered this food scarcity mindset, as if I was in a place where I didn't have enough. And I say that's a false food scarcity mindset because I do have enough. I have so much food. We have a stocked full pantry. We have stocked full freezers. We have so much food. I don't have to be worried about not having enough. But just the act of trying to keep my calories and my macros at a certain level triggered this response from me. And over the years, throughout my health journey, I really have worked hard to get my diet to a place where I could eat intuitively and still be pretty healthy. I wasn't, binging. I didn't feel out of control with foods, and I was able to eat. Like, I would make sure I kept my protein high and my carbs low, and I felt like I could kind of eat whatever I wanted within that framework. I didn't feel deprived at all. And, my weight was pretty stable, not as low as I would like it to be, but I was overall pretty healthy. My A1C, very, healthy. My blood sugar very much under control. So I had worked hard to get to this place of health while eating, intuitively as much as I wanted, not feeling deprived, stuff like that. And I was very happy with it. I still am. I think that's a really good thing to work on, because if you have to track in order to not binge, do what you got to do in the circumstance, but ultimately it would be better to not have to track and to be able to keep, your food choices healthier. But then on the other side of it, which is what I ran into when I started tracking, is that I needed to work on being able to track and still having a healthy mindset. So even though the amount of calories that I was allotted, the macros that I was allotted, perfectly reasonable. And actually, it's a lot of food because I am in that hyperthyroid state. So I'm able to eat a lot without gaining weight. And so my calories are very high. I eat all day long. But because of the hyperthyroidism, I still have the hunger. It doesn't feel like I'm eating as much as I am. But I do know that the number of calories that I have been eating is enough for me. Like, I don't need more. So even though I know that intellectually, I was still having these food scarcity thoughts and feeling like I was being restricted. So recognizing that was really helpful, because I want to be a person who is healthy enough to eat without tracking and not, lose control. I also want to be the person that can track and limit myself to, a reasonable amount of calories and still be healthy, like have healthy thoughts about that. I want the flexibility to do both. And so this practice of tracking my macros, it's been about 6 weeks now, 5 or 6 weeks now. And doing it for this amount of time has stretched me, and I'm learning that I have some work to do in that area. And so I am starting to work on it. And actually this last few days since I talked with Jonathan have been a lot better, and I feel like I'm working through some of those issues. One thing I see a lot in the wellness space is the idea that if something you do, like tracking macros, causes an unhealthy response, that therefore tracking macros must be bad. And this can be applied to all different kinds of things. If broccoli makes my stomach hurt, therefore broccoli must be bad. And I have kind of gotten out of that thinking. I definitely have been there in the past about certain things. And with this issue, my thoughts when I was having this false food scarcity mindset was I need to go to Carnivore, do something where I can eat as much as I want. I don't have to track. And that in my mind would be something like Carnivore, and trying to think of these like outs, something that I can do to get out of this place that I'm in. My mind just kept going to those kinds of things. And now I'm realizing that I don't need an out. I just need to work through this thinking and tell myself that I have enough, tell myself I am not restricted, that I'm tracking and working on my macros for, my own good. It's for my good in the end. And just work through those things rather than feeling the uncomfortableness that I was feeling from tracking and running away from it, finding some escape from it. So anyways, we are going to go into the call from Jonathan. So you will see all that in real time as we work through it.
Yeah. How are you?
Good.
Yeah. How's your week been?
It has been pretty good. I feel like so much better as far as like strength, and my sleep has been good. A lot of the symptoms are really, getting reduced. So I feel like I'm on the right track. It was my cycle this week, so made it through that. And it was actually, the cycle itself was fine, like
Great.
Light, quick. I didn't have pain like I did the last month. So I think I'm on the right track there. I've been struggling with tracking my food. Mm-hmm. And I'm trying to not be a baby, and I'm trying to like figure out what my issue is with tracking, because I am still dealing with the hunger. Like I'm just hungry all the time. I could eat all day. So that on top of my previous issues with tracking, and it's like bringing up a lot of things like, I don't know, like I'm trying to figure it out, and I haven't quite figured it out.
Okay. So let's flesh that out a little bit. So I'll just kind of ask some questions, and we can kind of try to peel back some layers.
Yeah.
Do you get like anxiety around the tracking? Like when you go to track before a meal, is there anxiety there? Or is it when you put the food in, like you're upset because you don't get to eat more? Or is there anxiety afterwards? Like where do you feel like that starts for you when you're going to like track or going to eat a meal?
Yeah. I think there's a little bit of like frustration that it just feels limited. Like, mm-hmm. And it's like, I know intellectually it's not, because I have plenty of food. Like that's not, but in my mind, I'm like, it feels restricted. So I'm like going back to these old thought patterns when I used to actually be restrictive and really, keep myself hungry all the time and, stuff like that. And
right, so because you're tracking, you feel like, because it's on your mind.
Yeah. Well, I'm thinking about it all the time. And And so I think I'm sure that the hunger from the hyperthyroid is playing into it, because I am feeling hungry. And so it's making me feel like I did previously when I was hungry because I wasn't giving myself enough food.
Yeah.
And so like I've tried, eating later so that, I have kind of a shorter eating window. So I feel more full during, the eating window. I've tried eating a lot in the morning because sometimes that can help me not feel as hungry later on in the day. But no matter what I've tried, I still get to the end of the day and I'm feeling like I wish I could eat more.
Mm.
And I'm trying to figure out, I know that part of it is physical, but I'm certain that part of it is just emotional as well. So I'm trying to just work through it, I guess.
Yeah, no, I totally get that. And I think too, it's a sensitive situation right now because there is a physiological, element at play here, which is that hyperthyroidism is going to be stimulating hunger. And so the tricky part there is that you can't not track because you could overconsume easily, especially if your hunger hormones aren't where they should be. I've seen that go both ends of the spectrum too. I see people that completely destroy themselves because they fast out and they have no appetite at all, and you can't get anything. And the other people, and so we have to track and make them track to eat enough. And
I've never been that person.
Yeah, other people just go way over the deep end, right? Because they're like, oh, intuitive means freedom. But really, it's not. It's really more of it becomes more of a crutch to just give into what is skewed hunger signals at the point in time. Right. That doesn't mean that we can't figure out a solution to what is a little better. We can play with macro ratios. We can see if more protein or fat or even more carbs. We'll play with the protein and fat first, but we can see if there's a certain ratio that makes you feel more satiated and can kind of help feed into those hunger signals in a more healthy way, for sure.
I found on the lower carb days, I'm craving carbs.
Okay. That's good to know.
Yeah.
Okay. I like for people to come to that food, that idea themselves. I don't like to ever assume that that's what's going on, but that can happen. And that might mean that we might need, and I've done this before, so this isn't like a first case, where there might need to be a couple weeks of just low carb, not keto, not cycling, just low carb, just to see okay, is this why your body is craving more carbs? And then when you so oftentimes, and there are people for sure that they have a very sensitive relationship with carbohydrates, even in whole food forms, right? And a little bit can make them go a lot of it, right? But I also find some people, specifically with women that are keto, low carb for a long time, or having thyroid issues or other sex hormone imbalances, they need carbohydrates. And your body is kind of like I always talk about how your hypothalamus is a lot like a folder. It's like a file system. It remembers things. It remembers what's normal and it remembers what's rare. Okay. And if your body wants something that's rare constantly, but it knows it's not normal, when you give it to it, it tries to get a lot of it because it doesn't know when it's going to get it again.
Right. That makes sense.
So what I often see is some women that do need some more carbohydrates in their ketogenic lifestyle, when they first introduce them, they are like ravenous pits because their body, and it's not because their body needs as much as they're consuming. It's because their body doesn't trust them to keep giving it to them. Yeah. Right? It knows their processes. It knows that it's going, you're going to have an apple or a bowl of berries, and then you're going to go, screw it, I want more. So over the weekend, I'm going to have a crap ton of crappy food. I'm not saying you're doing this. I'm just laying out a hypothetical situation. And then they have a crap ton of crappy food. They feel like crap. And then they go back to a strict fasting keto regimen to kind of purge the binge.
I've definitely been there before. Yeah.
And they do that. And so that's what their body knows. That's what their hypothalamus remembers. That's what their hormone balance and their blood and everything that is all that's cohesive in their system knows. That's what's probably about to happen. And so it gets while the getting's good, And so what I found is for some people, going through a couple weeks of just low carb, 80 to 100 grams of carbs, not crazy, still less than 20% of your daily intake, but you do that consistently over the course of a couple weeks and your body starts to go, okay, this isn't going anywhere. I can trust that I'm going to get this frequently a couple times a week at least. This is going to come. Okay. And that happens and it stabilizes, then we can get into a more productive carb cycling regimen.
Okay.
We can definitely try that if you want to try it.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely think that's the right way to go, just based off of what you're experiencing. I think that would be good, especially again with keeping your thyroid healthy and things like that. And of course, communicate with me, right? We might do this for 2 weeks, and I'd be like, kind of feel like crap.
Okay.
Right? And we might have to make some adjustments there. But I usually don't see that in this. It's actually more of I call an enlightenment period. They're like, oh my gosh, I actually feel normal. I'm not dying,
Yeah. Well, and then with my thyroid the way it is, I know my metabolism is revved. So maybe even though I'm eating 50 to 100 carbs per day, my body is wanting more because it's just burning through them too fast.
Correct. Yeah. So it's definitely going to burn through more. And then, of course, and to be fair, because, we have to be unbiased in all of this, the argument could be made to increase fats. The problem with that is that there's certain thyroid hormones, there's other hormones that are created through byproducts of carbohydrates. And fats can it can get in the way of some of it. It can replace some of that.
Okay.
But it's not because of the fat, it's because of the calories that the fat brings in. And just an overabundance of energy allows for your body to become more efficient at creating byproducts from the fatty acids and making things happen. Mm-hmm. The real question that we get into is how much fat is needed to replace the small amount of carbohydrates you may need every day. And for some women, it's not that much. They can do an extra 50 grams of fat a day, not gain weight, and they can replace that need for carbohydrates and they're fine. Mm-hmm. Other women, the need they have due to thyroid things or environmental or genetics or ancestry or any of that, they might need to eat an extra 150 grams of fat in order to replace 50 grams of carbs. The problem with that is an extra 1,000 plus calories. They gain a lot of unneeded body fat just to avoid including carbohydrates in their diet.
Wow.
Right. And I see that too. People are like, oh, I'm going to go high fat. And like, I went high fat, but I gained 30 pounds, but at least I feel fine now, but I hate myself. And it's like, you didn't have to put on the excess body fat for no reason, just to stick to a framework.
Right. Yeah. So I know from my experience, going high fat, like, it doesn't satiate me. Like, because I did like the 80-20 thing years ago. That was a long time ago. But I just remember I was never full. I could eat, thousands of calories of fat and never feel full. And I remember when I added some carbs back in, like, I felt full for the first time in I don't know how long. And I was also low protein at that time. So I don't know how much that played into it as well. But I just remember like carbs just satiating me for hours when I had been just starving for so long.
No, I remember that too. I remember
I am more on the side of, fats don't satiate. I need a lot of fat to satiate me versus a little bit of carbs. More for me. So
exactly. And I don't want people to listen to this and think that they need to do exactly what you're doing, because some women do and men too, like they do well with like a higher fat, moderate protein approach. That's great. But it's just realizing that not everybody does. I think that's the thing that I think in this community and space, people are starting to do a good job about talking about, is like that framework is not good for everybody long term. And it's figuring out what's good for you long term. And I agree with you. I remember when I was first learning about carb cycling and stuff due to my running, I remember I was eating, really high fat to try and deal with it because I didn't want to eat carbs. And I was hungry all the time. I started snacking because like I just couldn't fast. It was just and I remember I had a sweet potato and I went like 5 hours without eating for the first time in months. And I was like, just this little sweet potato. And I'm like, how in the world is it that potent? And not in a negative way. And it just started to unravel my mind. It was mind blowing. But
it's amazing how some people could, have the sweet potato and then it just drives their cravings through the roof, and they're, eating Ben and Jerry's ice cream in the next hour, And so it really depends on where your body is at, for sure.
Yeah, for sure. And I think too, and this is, and we can actually tie this back to something you said earlier. Perception is reality. Perspective is reality. And that really matters in these conversations, especially when we're dealing with something that is as sensitive as food is, because as we know, sugar is a drug that is part of a group that we have to survive, right? It's not like other drugs where we can just avoid said substance and we're good. If you don't eat, you die. So it's like playing this interesting navigation game, if you will. And perspective is reality. And so it's like something that you're going to have to work on. And we can definitely work through this and talk through this when you need to. But when you do, like, for example, tracking. Let's talk about tracking for a second. There's two ways to look at tracking. It's either I'm not allowed to have, it's either I'm only allowed to have this much, or it's I'm empowered to make myself feel well with this.
Yeah.
Right. And it's like and it's easy for us to lean on that exhibit A. Right. And so somebody could be in the same situation as you with the exact same amount of food, and they could feel free and empowered with their food. Absolutely. And the other person can feel very restricted, and realizing that it's not the food in that instance, it's your mindset. It's the way you're perceiving the life around you. And it's the thing with the sweet potato, right? I often find, and this isn't for everybody, right? Some people, they do have extreme blood physiology matters, right? So like blood sugar spiking with a sweet potato and then going back down can create imbalance, which can make you crave more sugar. And this can be this thing that can lead to a binge. 1000%. There's a lot to be said for that. Like some people, like I get blood sugar spikes from sweet potato, but white potato doesn't raise my blood sugar 5. It's magical. But the flip side, I have friends that eat white potato and it skyrockets, but sweet potato doesn't do anything. So like understanding yourself there too does matter. Point is that like
is so valuable to figure out your own. Yeah. And I've done a lot of that. So
absolutely. So physiology matters here. I'm not negating that at all. But I also think most of the time it's a mindset thing. Most people equate sweet potato to a carb, and they also equate Ben and Jerry's to a carb. And so if they're going to one, they might as well talk themselves into the other, and realizing that that's not a food problem. That's a mindset problem. That's a food addiction problem. That's something that you have to work through mentally through self-evaluation. And something I always say, something I'm going to really hammer down at the low carb cruise I'm speaking at, is that the most powerful tool you have is self-awareness. It's the most powerful tool you have. And a lot of people, they don't try to develop self-awareness on their dieting journey. They just focus on the diet framework. And so they diet and they heal and they do all this stuff, and they never really become aware of themselves. They only become aware of what they've been told about themselves by other people. And so they can't do this because it leads to this. Why? Why does it have to lead to that? Is it because that's what you've been taught and that's what you believe in? Right? Like I've made posts about this too. Like when people will post like a picture of an apple and like a funnel cake or a cupcake and go, these are the same thing. Drives me nuts. They're not even remotely close to the same thing, but that's the way a lot of people think. And even on a subconscious level. And so when they have the apple, it's like, okay, well, I'm already here. I already tasted something sweet. I might as well go to, marble slabs. I might as well, right? Because I'm already here. And it's like, no, you're not. You're not there until you walk into marble slabs, but it's just that it's working on that mental framework and that transition of like, I call it, so we talk about this phrase is popular, and abstainers versus moderators. And something I talk about is there's a difference between being a macro abstainer and a micro abstainer. And what I mean by that is some people are macro abstainers, meaning like for some reason where they're at, and this might be something that it might never be able to work through, they're macro, meaning that whole macronutrient, like carbs is a macronutrient. They cannot have any. They're carnivores. They'd rather not they'd rather not take the chance on feeling better because they're scared of the macro. And so they just eat meat. They don't care. Like they feel decent enough. They can live, whatever. But a lot of people aren't macro abstainers. That's just what they've been taught. A lot of people are micro abstainers. You take that macronutrient and you split it apart, and you look at different carbs and how they impact you. And how we know this is a lot of people are keto. A lot of people that are keto say that they're abstainers or carbs, but they eat like tomatoes and salad leaves every day. But those are carbs. It's just in their head, they've convinced themselves they're not, but they are. They're like 100% carbohydrates. But you'll hear them say, well, I abstain from carbs. No, you don't. You're a micro abstainer. You just don't realize it. Right. And it's just like getting through that part of the conversation. And I don't know if that the thing we just went through is super relevant to where you're at, but I just think it's really important to like notate, especially as like explaining like what you're going through and like how you can navigate it in a healthy way. Cause some people might be watching this and they might be like, oh, I'm right where Nili's at. What do I do? And it's like, this is how you do it. You have to really work on self-awareness and like getting through dogma and like going, okay, I want to be a ketone based person, but I want to do it in a way that allows me to thrive long-term. And it's just like, walking through that in a healthy way is super important when it comes to like feeling well overall.
Yeah, I definitely have gone through in the past and even, in the last few weeks, the idea of it would just be easier to go carnivore, like when I'm struggling with trying to figure out, do I really need more food? Do I really need more carbs, or, just trying to figure out what's going on with me. I'm like, I'd rather just throw it all out and just go on carnivore. But I know in my mind that that's not the answer for me long-term. Like I've been through that. But again, I just have to work through it and try to do the hard work, because I feel like the idea of going carnivore is kind of like an out. It's like, I want to just escape this struggle that I'm in, and that's my out. And I'm like, but I know that it's not really the out that I'm thinking of, but I do keep having those thoughts like, oh, wouldn't that just be nice?
But you have a beautiful level of self-awareness, which I love. It's the reason you're able to have that internal dialogue with yourself. And I think that the most difficult, because I've taken on the specialties I have, the most difficult part of my job is walking people that have been carnivore and stuff. Like I would literally be a millionaire if I had like $10 for every time like a client told me I should just go back to carnivore. Let's just go back to carnivore. Like, because it's the out. It's the thing they know worked before. And it's trying to convince them and make them understand that in a short period, it was great for them, but it's starting to cause the ill effects that they're experiencing. And it's easy. Hindsight's 2020, and it kind of skews when we're looking forward. Sometimes when we look in the rearview mirror, it's easy to look back and go, I felt so good then. Let's go back to that. And you go back and you don't feel as good. And now you're even more confused. You're even more angry. You're even more frustrated. And it's hard.
I just need to carnivore harder.
Yeah.
Go to lion diet. That's what I need. That'll fix me.
Beef, salt, and water. Beef, salt, and water. Oh boy, I could never. Even when I did carnivore, I've never done the lion's diet. I have no. I like pork chops too much.
Chicken wings.
Chicken wings. It'd be disastrous.
Yeah.
But yeah. Okay. So I haven't. Okay. So good thing is, a couple good things to note here. Your sleep's been great, which is just fantastic. In fact, hold on. If you're cool with it, let me share your habit tracker so I can I'm not just talking to a screen. Cool. I love this thing. See, this is what's cool. I can go here and I can just see like, okay, so green. She's had great. You've had great.
It's been great.
Yeah, sleep's been great. Your weight has stabilized, which is awesome. Like, I love that. I think what we're trying to do, I think that's great. I want it to stay right where it's at. It's just that
maintain what I've lost, not push myself too hard. That's probably good.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Bowel movements have been regular, which is great. Your water intake overall has been great. Cycle was a healthy 26, 27 days, which is great. Yep. Workouts have been great. How's your heart rate been?
It's been getting a lot better. My resting heart rate is back in the 70s as of a couple days ago. So like 79, 78, which it hasn't been for like more than 2 months. During my workouts, I'm able to work out without it spiking crazy high, unless I, want it to. So I get my next blood draw on Friday. So we'll see where I'm at with the thyroid hormones and stuff. But I feel like I'm on the right path.
I'll go ahead and I'll adjust your macros. I'm not going to lower your fat or protein at all because you're still pretty hungry. So we're just going to up your carbs and your weight's staying stable. We might see it go a pound up because of the extra water on the days you usually don't have that extra water retention from the carbohydrates, but not fat, not worried about it at all. Okay. Just keep me updated on how you're feeling. Let's see what your heart rate does. I'm curious to see if it lowers even more by doing that. And then we'll get the blood labs back next week and then we'll go from there.
All right. Sounds good.
Sweet.
So as you saw in the call, Jonathan upped my carbs. So instead of doing every other day, 50 carbs, 100 carbs back and forth, I'm just doing 100 carbs every day. And I know that freaks some people out. Although I do know that I do pretty well with carbs as long as I don't let myself go overboard. I have worn CGMs in the past, and so I'm not concerned about that. And actually, I did a 100 carb experiment, 100 carb per day experiment a while back, and I did detail that on the channel, and I did really well with it. Like, I felt really good. The only thing I really saw was that my insulin went up a little bit, not really even enough to be concerning, but at the time I just went back to more keto. So anyways, I know that I do well with a little bit higher carbs, and so I'm excited about that. Like I said, this is 3 or 4 days since we recorded that call, and I can tell you my hunger levels have been lower since I did add the carbs every single day. So I'm really happy with that. I think that was definitely the right move. Anyways, we will be back next week for another wellness update. I have some blood work coming in, so that will be helpful to, try to, get some more pieces of this puzzle we're trying to figure out. So I will be sharing that next week. Hope you guys are all doing well, and I will see you again in the next video.